Hello, guys, welcome to Psych Minds. If you are new to the channel and you have not subscribed yet, do subscribe, like, and share if you like the content. We are currently reading In Therapy by Susie Orbach. Case of Helen, page number 54. Helen, first session. Helen is in her 20s. She has been coming to see me for 18 months. She's very much a privileged middle class Londoner, hyper cosmopolitan, well traveled, and along with her contemporaries, sees herself working in New York, Hong Kong, or Sydney for a time. She was successful at school and university and has landed a job in a prestigious law firm. She's tall with blonde hair, long fingers, and an inviting smile. Outwardly, she's extremely confident, but inside, troublingly insecure. She's planning to marry Rob, her boyfriend of more than 4 years. He's heart surgeon, warm, and supportive, and comes from a similar background. Of late, she has been interested in discovering a bit more about her inner life and what makes her tick. But she's skittish, and sticking with an idea or feeling isn't easy. Helen, how are you? Susie, okay, thanks. Helen, I had a bit of an just a bit of a weird weekend really. I just did something just um yeah, I was at this thing and I ended up um I don't really know how to sorry, I'm long pause. Helen is in danger of stalling and I sense she need a cushion to get some words out. Susie, where were you? What was it? Helen, it was just a work thing, but I just like slept with this man. Susie, uh huh. Helen, who was this guy? He's just a partner in a different firm that I know. This thing, just was sort of looking at me and he was saying some stuff and I just did it. I just did it. In a moment, I just did it. I don't know why. I don't really know. I'm aware of pace here. Helen is taking a while to tell me what she wants to say, but as soon as she is almost racing along describing to herself what she has done. Susie, would you want to discover why? Helen, yeah, I guess, but Susie, how old? Helen, I guess 50s. Uh huh. Helen, it makes me feel very sick thinking about the actual but I think weirder because of Rob. It is just not like me. I don't do that kind of thing. I don't do that kind of thing, you know? I have never done that. And yeah, I am just not that kind of person, really. I am really interested in Helen's use of language. She says this thing, I don't really do this kind of thing. I'm holding this speech pattern in my mind as I try to understand what it is that has happened in this encounter. Susie, so you have surprised yourself. Helen, yeah. Susie, in an uncomfortable way. Helen, yeah. Susie, and were you uncomfortable with Rob last night? Helen, yeah, in my head. Yeah, but not outwardly. Susie, yes, we know that is your tendency, isn't it? You are incredibly skilled at being Helen. I know. Susie, apparently available to everybody or Helen, I know. Susie, thinking things, conveying that things are just fine. Helen, Susie, when actually you have things inside of you that are disturbing. And now it's Helen crying. Sorry, crying. Long pause. Susie, what is going through my mind? Helen, yeah, yeah. Susie, is that you have been trying to bring more to of yourself to yourself. When I say she is trying to bring more of herself to herself, I'm referring to those cut off parts of Helen that she doesn't really know much about. Her psychological energy was harnessed to achieve from early on. She went to a privileged private girls' school in London, and after a gap year traveling through Thailand, Australia, and New Zealand, she read law at Cambridge. She was then recruited to a Golden Circle law firm. The backstory is that Helen's mother was well off and middle class. She did not develop a career outside the family. She was stopped from doing so by her own mother's disapproval and a lack of encouragement from her husband, a successful lawyer. Helen is the eldest of four and was designated to carry her mother's unfulfilled ambition. In doing so and doing so well, she didn't discover her own desires or her own ambition. She's arrived where she's meant to be, but there's an emptiness and a sense of purposelessness. The attributes she has developed don't feel integral to her, more as though they are stick ons. In the therapy, we are tentatively addressing the rather undeveloped aspect of her. Helen. Yeah, but I don't know who that is. I don't know that I know who I am. There's a plea in her voice, a hopeless cry almost of not knowing the territory of who she is. It's not anything as crude as being a good girl, although there is that, but it is a sense of being opaque to herself. I feel her frustration. She wants to feel more alive, but a low level depression state, depressive state lies behind her charm, and what's depressed is this undeveloped and unknown part of her. Susie, I know, and so maybe this is what this episode is about. It's a blip. It stands in contrast to your competence in everything and being perfect and just lovely to Rob, which may have precluded discovering other things. Blips aren't just smudges that need to be rubbed out, they can be useful to you. You are considering marrying him. Maybe you want to show him a bit of your confusions and your Helen. I just the thought of like expressing that to him is just really, I don't know, just the idea of actually having like, I don't know, talking about this stuff. Susie, a conversation. Helen, I would just be weird. Laughs. A conversation, yup. Susie, one that starts, oh, I don't feel so good. I'm a bit confused. Helen, I know, but he would just say why. I don't think he would understand. Susie, so then you might find the words to answer his why, just as you have found them here. Helen, what? I feel weird that I have slept with this man. Susie, I don't think that's the issue, is it? The issue is, Helen, well, it feels, Susie, that this has cracked something for you, something that you have shown me but you haven't ever taken to Rob. It's the carapace you have which has served you pretty well, but it is also, Helen. It is just like he's really nice. There's nothing, Susie. Yeah, but it is just deprived you. It has deprived you. You have felt I can't really show who I am, the other aspects. Helen, which ones? Susie, the muddled bits and not so sure, the ones who isn't always striving. Helen, yeah, I sort of feel like, I don't know, like, I don't know about those things. I feel sort of more, feel a lot. Reading the words, it sounds like I'm missing Helen. I'm on one track and she's on another. Helen is very interested uh, in concrete Where is it? Thinking in truths, in facts, but right now something else needs to emerge for her. I have the impression that I am crowding her out by trying to extend the conversation while being pushed into very concrete thinking. Do I tell? Don't I tell he's nice? I would like Helen to be able to catch the stray thoughts, the uncomfortable feelings, the things that don't fit, the texture of life that is banished, is sequestered off, is excluded during the day, but which causes her anxiety or rebounds upon her in the morning as she is getting up to go to work. Helen. Yeah, I sort of feel like I feel fine. What is that look? Susie. It was a look with a question mark. Helen. I feel fine. I just feel fine. Long pause. Susie. Do you think this has got anything analogous to when you feel you need to cut yourself? To wipe out something that's difficult, and that what you are doing here is actually trying to bring it here rather than banish it? Helen's been periodically cutting her arms. She started during her A levels. It has usually been provoked by a difficult feeling or a feeling which overwhelms her that she doesn't know what to do with. The cutting has historically provided some relief. It allows her to sob and mm, wash away the her confusions. A growing discovery for Helen in the therapy is that feelings can trickle in without having to be suppressed. There isn't just an on or off tap. Most of the time, as we see, she still likes to square things away, and when she can't, she can become distraught. Helen, I suppose I feel sort of quite like lonely a lot of time. Susie, uh huh. Helen, but that doesn't make any sense because I'm surrounded by people all the time. Susie, well, alone isn't the same as lonely. She looks at me quizzically. You could be missing some bits of yourself. This lonely that Helen. This lonely that Helen is now touching on is a crucial piece of her difficulties. It relates to the focus on achieving, taking exams, getting into the prestigious school and university and law firm, and finding a boyfriend with a similar family background has driven her. They linked her to others, but it is a lonely linkage as she is only present at a surface. Living knowing herself is a foreign idea. She has intrigued but a bit bemused by the idea that she is lonely. Helen. But what bits? What am I lonely for? For? What am I missing? Susie. The way you have described it to me, it seems like instead of these bits of you being tucked inside of you, they are off somewhere else, almost outside of yourself. And when they emerge, they kind of boomerang back on you and you find them disconcerting. I think we have been trying to do is help you to get to know those aspects. And I suppose the weekend was an explosion of something that seems so alien that it is usually kept outside of your awareness. As long as Helen is surrounded by people and tasks and knows what is expected of her, she can function at a very high level. On her own, she isn't really sure of who she is. She feels empty and lost. For her, it's a blessing that she has to work long hours and go along with the mantra of work hard, play hard. Helen, yeah, I sometimes feel though, like, what is the actual point? Like, what is the point? Susie, uh huh. Helen, what is it actually for? Like, why am I getting that person more money and not this person? Why? What am I doing? Am I going to be there at the time, play at the same place or some other just the same, doing the same things for my whole life? Susie, good questions. Helen, well, then what? So I just get like, go and work in a surf shop or something, laughing. Susie laughing. I think this is a really good illustration of your thinking process, which goes something like, if I'm critical or uneasy at my high prestige law firm, then there's nothing. Could I ask you to maybe take a pause and see if there are bits that have meaning for you as well as the bits that are difficult, that might be more nourishing? Helen, is that the point? Helen has got a rather black and white reality. So if she is not the successful lawyer and that doesn't make sense to her anymore, then she might as well do something designated by her education and social class as useless, to go and work in a shop, as though there is nothing that has meaning. I'm trying to slow her up here to see if she can conceive of herself as having meaning wherever she might be. At another level, she is asking about the meaning of life, an existential question we can all find ourselves reflecting on from time to time, but which for her has an urgency given that she has, without realizing it, been following the lead of others rather than discovering her own. Helen, is that the point? Susie, well, it isn't the point. There are many points. Helen, what is the point? I was just sitting on the tube on the way in this morning. I was just like, right, so this is it, This is I've been on this tube forever and I'm going to stay on this tube forever. But don't you feel it as well? Pause. At all? Pause. Susie, it is very hard to be missing a lot of yourself and your experience. Susie, Helen, yeah, but that is so abstract, isn't it? Like, what does that actually mean that you can say that? Susie, well, I think what it means is that when you wake up in the morning and you have all of that anxiety, we could try to slow it down and see what it is there for. Right, Helen, visibly relieved, she sits up, attentive. Okay, yeah. All right, so it's as if it's trying to tell me something, is it? Yeah, it's both Susie. Yeah, it's both shielding you, but it is also it's a signal. It's a giving you something. Helen, yeah, definitely, definitely. Susie, so maybe we could just consider it without it driving you to take an action. I think when you feel uneasy, you rocket into action. Action has given you a certain comfort, but there isn't always an easy resolution or an emotional solution to what is troubling you. Action makes you feel less feeble because you feel yourself to be doing something, but sometimes we need to put action to one side. Helen, um, 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 Susie, to consider privately and slowly what that signal is. Some space might then open up, and in that space, questions like, do I want to be a lawyer? Do I want to be X? What am I feeling now? Might emerge, and if you don't shut them right down by action or attempted solutions, such reflections might lead you to what you are missing that is producing this sense of loneliness. Helen, okay, yes, that makes a lot of sense. I feel less jangled, yes, thank you. Susie, see you on Tuesday. Helen, okay, Susie, thanks. Helen has never found the I in herself. She has followed the path of doing well and it has left bereft of herself. It has left her bereft of herself. Now, I am suggesting that her internal psychic furniture can be rearranged, and there might be quite a few interesting pieces in there that she might be able to sit on, lie on, or enjoy. I chose not to take up the issue around sexuality or being desired and desiring that sleeping with this older man might suggest, nor did I pursue with Helen the meaning of the man's age. It's not that I think these issues are insignificant, but therapy always involves judging what is most salient at a given time. I do know from Helen's history that her father, a man now in his late 50s, was quite remote and, from her perspective, controlling. He was a commercial lawyer, and Helen has wondered why she has chosen that same branch of law to practice in. He had admired her diligence and taken pride in her prizes at school. But he wasn't much interested in recognizing her work ambitions. She has longed for his approval but for her work success. She had been pleased by attention from senior partners, both male and female, at the law firm. When she had described a male partner's approval, she had felt a frisson as though she were entering into forbidden territory. It does seem to me to have some transgressive about transgressive about it. The transgression could be to do with her daring to restitute herself and the possibilities that she has now opened up for herself. This contests the view her father had of her. He saw her as delightful but not serious, and certainly not someone who should have serious work ambitions. While she can do the job that she has easily enough for being seduced by a father figure at another law firm might be Helen's way of getting some undergirding for her ambition from a man similar in age to her father. Her father may not be prepared or be able to give this recognition, so she has unconsciously sought it herself. But in doing so, she's felt that she's punished herself because the act of sleeping with this man has compromised her morality. The reader may be wondering, is this a classical Oedipal situation? The daughter sleeps with a proxy father. I don't think that is particularly useful interpretation. The motivation may well be to find support and approval from an older man at work and to unconsciously show her mother that she can be a professional woman and sexual, but I'm not sure how such an interpretation at this point would help Helen with her struggle to feel authentic in herself. Second session. It is 8 months later, and Helen, still working as a lawyer and still with Rob, has recently had an early diagnosis of cancer, which has been treated. Her skittishness has been modified, and she is full of questions about her work and her relationship. Helen. Susie, hello. Susie, hello. Helen, how are you? Susie, fine, thank you. And you? Helen, good actually, yeah. I'm good, yeah. I feel different somehow today, yeah. Susie, what kind of different? Helen, I love it when you look at me like that. I think she means with interest and curiosity. Helen, it's strange. When we got the all clear last week, when I knew. It's what I knew and it's what I hoped for and what they suspected would happen anyway because it was so early. But you can't forget something like that. It is still there. I mean, it could come back at any point, and I never thought I would be one of those people, you know? I never thought it would be me. Susie, yes. Helen, I suppose you never do. It's just you hear about it so much, and then when it actually happens, and the idea that if I hadn't gone in so early and if I hadn't seen that sticker on that wall of the gym, I wouldn't, and my friend's sister having died last year so quickly from being undiagnosed, it's just a bit mind blowing, isn't it? Then I started to think that there was a reason for me noticing that sticker. Suddenly my attention came to it. It's that copper feel, that charity that great girl has set up from being stage 4 and wanting to actually do something. She's only 23. It's like, why had I not noticed that before? And if my perception is more accurate or something, it is beyond me. In a sense, that is there something I didn't know was going on. Susie, it's an interesting question. We don't know because we can't reconstruct this. Whether you actually felt your breasts, didn't realize you were feeling your breasts, felt something that you didn't. Helen. Yeah, subconsciously. Susie. You didn't like or was a bit different? Helen. Yes. Susie. And then noticed the poster? Helen. Do you think I'm being silly then thinking? Susie. I think you're feeling very relieved. Helen. Yeah. Susie. And sometimes when we are relieved, we seek explanations for. Helen. Ah, really, God. Maybe I am more. I know that the weirdest thing is that it's made me feel more present. Susie. Yeah, it's funny. Before the days kind of stretched before me, and now. Susie. Yeah, I think that is the other paradox because you are sorting what matters and what doesn't matter, and you're feeling everything so much very more vividly. Helen. Yeah, it's funny. Before the day kind of stretched before me, and now since the day I got the diagnosis and I walked out, I said this to you before. I felt like I'm seeing things in high definition suddenly. What if I wasn't here tomorrow? And I thought this wasn't here, but actually it's me, And therefore, what is me? Is this the me that I'm supposed to be living as? Susie, it is quite a moving thought, really, isn't it? Helen, yeah. Susie, because you have been on a search. Helen, yes, I know. Susie, for you, and then there was all of a sudden a clock that said, Helen. But that's why I think it's funny that, yeah, I suppose that's why I'm questioning whether it was coincidence or what it was, because it's making me question a lot of things. Even going back to work and what I spent my hours doing. Hellinga, I think her name is, started the charity, and it makes me think, am I really meant to be sorting out people's contracts? Susie, well, that was a question from before, wasn't it? Helen, I know. Susie, and maybe it is quite safe that you have got somewhere to go to work and they have been accommodating, but it is an opportunity to see if this is the bit of law you do want to be doing, or indeed, do you want to be doing law? Helen, and you know what? Getting the all clear is like there is something weirdly, I mean, yes, like you said, it's a relief, but it's also this that is hard to say. I felt anxiety, and this is because you helped me identify it. I might be wrong, but I think the anxiety came out of a sense that I don't want to lose this moment. Susie, you mean you don't want to slot right back into everything as it was? Helen, yeah, yeah. Susie, yeah. Helen, you know, Susie, I think that is very understandable that you want to take this opportunity. Helen, yes, and Susie, the opportunity, that's your life, that is you. Helen, yeah. I read something about the musician Wilco Johnson. He was terminal and he's still here. He described it as he feels like now he's parachuting back to the land of the living, and actually, there's something slightly comatose about about that land. That really resonated with me because it made me feel like I don't want to be asleep. And I know we have talked about the fact that, that things that happened last year with Rob and me deciding just to get on with it. I wonder whether it was me trying to leave myself and the situation in which I was, treading on day after day without questioning. Susie, I think you have got a real conundrum, haven't you? Because you want to stay alive to this 3D or high definition. Helen, yeah, I know, and I feel like anxious with it. Susie, the intensity of it is exciting, but it's challenging. Helen, do you know what it reminds me of, Susie? It reminds me of when I first fell in love with Rob. Susie, uh huh. Helen, 5 years ago. And then everything became high definition and then it wears off. I don't know if that's me. I don't know if that's what chemically happens or whether you stop seeing the truth and actually what you see then see is actually what you then see is, or you stop looking. And I mean, this week I have been at a couple of appointments and Rob missed the second one, and it's not that I expected him or needed him to be there, but I felt his absence in a more emotional sense. He had this work thing or whatever, and then he got home and he was sort of detached, and it is not that I want him to invest in. I understand that I'm dealing with this myself and it's my thing. I don't want to transfer too much onto him. I know we have talked about that, but we were sitting on the sofa and I was just looking at him and thinking, is that it? And Susie, were you able to say how you felt? Helen, no. Susie, sorry to come back with the kind of question that I am always asking. Helen, I know. Susie, well, could you say it to yourself, even if you couldn't say it to him? You have said it's okay to deal with this on your own, but how did you feel about having to go to the second appointment alone? Helen, two things. I felt weirdly fine and I felt weirdly angry. Susie, uh huh. Helen, I can identify it as anger, but it didn't come up as an anger. It came up as numbness, and that's kind of thing that I don't want. That's the old me. I felt like I expect him to be there, but because he is there, not because I actually want to share it with him necessarily. Susie, uh huh. Helen, do you know? And that's scary. And then maybe I'm sitting looking at him thinking maybe it's an attacking thing, but I don't know. If I don't know what my feelings are for him. Susie, what's the attacking thing that you stopped before you said? So I couldn't quite get it. Helen, oh, I don't know. It's hard to know whether it's an attacking impulse to try and distance, or whether it's actually a bad thing to have thought. Maybe I want more than a marriage and kids with him. And that is really scary because it's like, I don't know, because I love him, but do I? Is he Susie? Well, I think the question is an important one to consider from your side. I also think, and this is a bit of a refrain, but more urgent now, that you haven't talked together. He might not be able to handle what has happened. He might be so scared of losing you. Helen seems not to have been able to countenance the idea that Rob may have had his own response to her diagnosis. She's been drawn to him as a rock, but in that designation, there is also an inadvertent ignoring of what might have been going on for him. He's a doctor in the business of saving lives, and yet, as we know from protocols, doctors don't treat their loved ones because of their own emotional attachments, which may not be obvious or a hindrance, but might just get in the way. That doesn't mean, of course, that we know what his feelings might be regarding Helen's diagnosis. Helen, do you think he just feels like he's not here? Susie, that he cuts off? Has he got sufficient capacity to share what he is experiencing? And then you're not feeling undergirded, and neither perhaps is he. Helen, yeah, I feel like, I don't know if. Susie, he's your person to be with in this, to be going through a difficult time in your life. Helen, yeah. But it is also, what version of myself am I with him? What version of myself am I? Susie, and what happens if you are the high definition version? Helen is wondering about what version of herself she is or wants to show us. We still have work to do in enabling her to integrate the different states of being that make up who Helen is. She has allowed herself to be vulnerable and curious about the different aspects of herself that are emerging, and I am intrigued at her description of what version of herself she is. Helen, yeah. Susie, what happens? Helen, yeah, I know, cause I'm thinking if I hadn't got it early and it could come back tomorrow in a different form, and if that's the case, I don't want to go back to sleep. I just wonder whether Rob is tied up with that. Maybe it's irrational. Maybe it's just because at the same time I'm anxious to lose that feeling because we had a conversation last year and he said, I want two kids because it would be better for a car if we have to take stuff in it, and that. Susie, so you are into finding the banal at the moment in him, and that is disappointing for you. Look, there's him, there's you, and then there's the relationship. There is the relationship you have created together, which may not serve either of you as richly as you would like it to be, and it may not be able to open up, or it may not. It makes sense to be exploring this now. Helen, yeah, it's terrifying because it's like, without that, what am I? And without him, Susie, well, isn't the question who are you, not what am I? Helen, yeah, but I thought I was him. It's a feeling that is very in my body. Susie, say more. Helen, it's like, I can't get rid of it. I can forget for a minute, but then it comes back. It's a sort of, it's hard to explain. It's like a sort of internal itch. Susie, what are you flicking away there? Helen, just, it's like something inside. I don't know how to explain it, Susie. Susie, right, I might have lost you and I don't want to. You said I think I was. Helen, it's like something I need. That there's something, it's like my veins are itching. Susie, because they are inflamed. Helen, maybe, but it's like I can't express whatever it is. Susie, your veins are the things that carry your blood. Helen, Susie, and they go all through your body. Helen, Susie, and they are the fact that you are aware of them. Helen, yeah. Susie, you know what it's reminding me of? Helen, Susie, and maybe this is a hell of a jump, but it is reminding me of when you used to have to cut to see what that you are alive. Helen, I know, yeah. And Susie, and I'm wondering what that message is, the itchy thing. Helen, I know, what is the message? Susie, it might be something that you have designated, not as a present, but as wanted, desire perhaps, longing. Helen, what if, see, we have a wedding next weekend and I'm dreading it. Susie, say more. Helen, I'm just dreading the same old, same old. He gets on that suit he wears, I go buy something new, we get in the car, it's just me and him, and ah, Susie, is it because you are imagining it being your wedding and that is what the dread is? Helen, I don't know. Susie, or is it that you are just in a circle where that's the edge you all are? That's the age you all are, and Helen, no, it's more the car journey. Laughing. Why do you look like that? Susie, I'm asking what is in there or what doesn't happen in the car. The look is, I suppose, I'm surprised and interested. Helen, yeah, but then I don't know what the alternative is. What is it supposed to be like? Susie, well, supposing you were telling him you who you are now. Helen, right, yeah. I don't know. I can't imagine that. Susie, well, you managed to say it here. Helen, I think he would just say, don't be silly, it's fine. Susie, what if you said, I'm living life, I'm feeling things in a very intense way, and it's making me question everything about Helen? Oh, I can't imagine having that conversation. Isn't that weird? Susie, well, the reason I think it is particularly weird is that you drew a comparison to it when you first fell for each other. And I presume you brought some of yourself to that, and you told him who you were, and you found out who he was. The car journey could be a very good opportunity. Helen, to talk? Susie, yes. Helen, I don't. Yeah. What am I scared of? Scared of? Susie, you are scared of finding out, presumably, that he's not the right person. You are scared of finding out that your relationship is right and it is got to go deeper. Anything in between those two bands? Helen, Susie, you are scared of being open, perhaps in a way that makes the things not fit in the car with the two children and enough room for all the gear. Helen, oh, it's such a sicky feeling. Yeah, it makes me feel sick. Susie, what? The effort of bringing yourself to him? Helen, yeah, and saying I'm feeling something, but I don't feel the same. Susie, is there a way to provoke the conversation where instead of feeling you are boxed in, you could talk about how this has been a hell of a thing we have both had to go through? Helen, yeah, we have never had that conversation. I know. I don't think he knows how to deal with it. He isn't, he can talk about the particularities, but it's very practical. I mean, that's why I'm searching for maybe something greater in the sense of, is this what it is? It's blood test, and then you go back to the usual. You take the pills every day, and you just go back to work and pretend that it never happened. Susie, well, you have been so active in your own treatment and thoughts. Helen, yeah, I know. Susie, and I'm wondering whether you could apply that activity to finding out how he's feeling and how he has been, and whether that would then open up a way for you to have a conversation. Helen, Susie, in which you could also say that it's been like for you as opposed to everything is so neat and tidy and appointments and everything. I think there is something that you are edging towards. Helen, so how do I start that, Susie? Well, Susie, well, at the wedding, you have got an hour and a half in the car. It's a beginning. Helen, yes. Susie, wouldn't it be helpful to know how this whole period has affected him? Helen, yeah, that's true. Susie, and that's a place to start. Helen, that is true. But you know what? Maybe I feel angry that he doesn't express that. Susie, yeah, but maybe that's the point of being a couple. Maybe one person can't do it without a prompt and without the. Helen, do you know what else came up? The other day he tried to have sex, and I said I wasn't feeling well, but I was, and I was relieved that I had an excuse, and that is. Susie, okay, so I think that you are just confirming what we are saying, because if that is his way of getting close and it wasn't what you wanted. Helen, well, I know, but it's been ages anyway. Susie, and you didn't want it at that time because you are not feeling close. You need to find a way to see whether there is closeness, and language might be another way of doing and feeling this. Helen, ok, yuck. Then maybe you are right, Susie. Maybe I need to have this conversation. But what is terrifying is that if I hadn't had cancer, maybe this conversation wouldn't be happening now. Susie, maybe not as urgently, but I think we have had some hints. Helen, have you really? Susie, yeah, I think the incident with the partner in the other firm was a hint that you needed, or you were feeling distant, or something was changing inside of you and you wanted to connect differently to Rob, and now this has given you an opportunity. Helen, yes. Susie, adversity has given you the impetus, and it will be useful to see whether you can imagine that you can actually get beyond that ugh, glushed up feelings. Helen, yes, because it is interesting that when the diagnosis happened, I felt closer to him instantly about a week, and then the distance came back. So it is hard to identify whether it's me or it's him. Susie, or both of you. Hmm. Helen. Susie, couples are really good at adjusting to each other. And when things open up, there are possibilities for both of you in a relationship. When things close down, there's a very small area you can operate in. Helen, what's the point of staying in something? Susie, you tell me. Helen, because it's there, because the unknown is unknown. Susie, well, there's not much point in going somewhere else if you are not going to take yourself with you. So you might as well experiment here. Helen, well, what if I already have? What if I'm meant to experiment somewhere else? Can you only find that out by experimenting here? Susie, no, I don't think there's one way to do things, but I'm not sure. I think this is. Helen, is the other side scary or scarier than this side? Or is it that a fantasy? Either way, scared, better or worse. Susie, I don't think we can be perspective, but be prescriptive, but I don't see why. Helen, why? Susie, avoiding. You have a long history with him. Why isn't it worth trying to see if there's some more depth? Helen, I think I'm angry. Susie, yeah, I think maybe you are. But I think maybe behind that anger is either a disappointment or a complacency or your engagement in it. And there's a lot to say. Helen, saying something is more terrifying than not, though, or more uncomfortable, but then I suppose that's the whole point, isn't it? Yeah. Susie, uh huh. Helen, oh no, Susie, going to have to do it. Susie, well, look, you haven't got to do it this week. We are meeting up again, but would you ponder on that? Helen, okay, yeah, I will. Why do I feel annoyed? Susie, you're probably annoyed with me that I have heard what you are saying. Helen, that's funny, yeah, I'm livid. Why is that a paradox? Susie, well, maybe you think you can just come and dump things here, but actually we are interested in you. So I'm not just a rubbish bin. Helen, no, do you feel like that? Susie, no, that is too strong. What I mean is that this room, our relationship, isn't just a place for you to take the pressure off. Helen, yes, I know, of course. It isn't. Of course it isn't. Susie, it's about what is bubbling, what is exciting, what is troubling, what is possible, and I think that's where we are. If therapy is just about letting off steam, then it isn't therapy. It doesn't provoke change. It just keeps things in stasis. Of course, sometimes because it is the only place to speak honestly, it can feel like the individual is depositing their emotional waste, but that is on the way to being able to explore, understand, and assimilate conflicts. Helen, possible? That's what it is, isn't it? Susie, yeah, that is possible. Helen, that is so scary. Susie, so on that note, Helen, okay. Susie, yeah. Helen, don't look at me like that. Susie, I'm not going to look at you like that. I'm going to send you home. Helen, but I'll think about it. Susie, I don't think you will be able to not think about it actually, which may be helpful. Helen, yeah, okay, helpful. Yeah, yeah, that's good. It's all good, isn't it? Susie, well, you don't have to make it better for me. I think we just have to accept there's enormous changes going on. Helen, oh my god. Susie, or challenges? Maybe we will call them challenges. Helen challenges, okay. Helen is exploring whether she wants to stay with Rob and can make a life with him. He ticks all the boxes on a social level and they have enjoyed things together in the past, but the changes in Helen before the cancer diagnosis and since have reinforced concern that they might not make the right kind of make the kind of partnership she wants. She's frustrated with Rob's difficulty with opening up or initiating conversations about his emotional state, and also aware that she herself doesn't know how to broach that the kind of conversation she wants. Part of her wants to leave that relationship while part of her is recognizing her own difficulties with opening up herself. This is often a challenge. You meet at a point and make a relationship which in itself provides a spur to emotional growth so that both parties are changed by their relationship. Then life trundles on and ways of being together can settle into quite satisfying patterns, but it can also ossify and the excitement that brought the couple together evaporates, which leads one or other to question its viability. Therapy has often been accused of creating a wedge in relationships. My experience is quite the opposite. In that, I'm aware of looking to see where relationships can, if there is sufficient desire, be strengthened. Of course, damaging, controlling, hurtful relationships, which we find out about in therapy, need unpicking, and the individuals need help to understand their pull to a difficult and wounding relationship so they are able to leave. That brings us to the end of this case of Helen. We will be reading the next case in our next reading. It was fine. Well, that brings us to the end. If you haven't subscribed yet to the channel and you like what you listen, what you are hearing, then do like, share, and subscribe. Bye bye for now. Keep reading. If you have any suggestions, recommendations, comments, feedback, anything at all, you can reach out to me in the comment section of the video you're viewing or in the community section. Bye bye. Take care and keep reading.